On today's episode of Finside the NFL, we'll dive fin too deep with myself and Neal Driscoll. Should the Miami Dolphins be trying to save their season, or should they be quietly tanking for a draft position? Plus, OBJ returns to practice. With Jaelan Phillips out, the Miami Dolphins, they've added a former Baltimore Raven pass rusher. We will talk about all of that and so much more. Plus, you know, they got the Patriots on deck, so we got to give some early thoughts on that game. So smash that like button, subscribe if you're new, and let's get into this.
Touchdown! Got it! You have got to be kidding me. Jalen Waddle has a Dolphin touchdown. And he will score! He's got field down the near side, man open, touchdown! The run from Tua Tagovailoa. Touchdown! He's going deep. He's got it for a touchdown again! Touchdown!
Beautiful day to be a Dolphin fan. Let's go!
You're listening to Fin Too Deep.
Tua back to throw. Blitz coming. They get to him. Oh, he takes off running. And he's in. Touchdown, Miami.
With the sixth pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, the Miami Dolphins select Jalen Waddle.
Giving you unfiltered, informed, and controversial takes on the Miami Dolphins and the NFL Draft. Here's Reason and Neal.
What is good, Fin Nation? What's good? It's your boy Reason, and we are back here for another one as I'm joined by the man they call on Twitter a closet Baltimore Ravens fan. Without people realizing he lives in Maryland and it's all around him. It's like me in hockey season. The Leafs are all around me, okay? You know what I mean? Like, that's just because of where we live. But Neal, another loss. And I got to jump right into it. This is the problem, Neal. This is the problem right now. And I've been told privately, I was told privately last weekend, if this can, and this is before the loss to the Titans, if this continues until Thanksgiving, I was told in either before Thanksgiving or right after Thanksgiving, that's when you can start expecting to see in-season changes. And the problem right now, Neal, is we aren't even competitive. You've got guys out here coaching teams and winning with backup quarterbacks, Neal. Our offense looks like vintage Cam Cameron or Joe Philbin, take your pick. While shout out to Anthony Weaver, he's got the defense playing, balls to the wall, even when they know they got another inept unit on the other side of the football. But that's the problem, Neal. How are you feeling right now after a third straight game where this team is not competitive? And Neal, we went from not being competitive against the cream in the crop, against some of the cream of the crop, the Buffalo Bills, who got blown up by the Ravens anyway, so that should tell you where we're at, to just watching us get blown out by a team everyone was calling the worst in the NFL before that game, Neal. And you would come away, if you came down from Mars and you watched that game, you would think we were the worst team in the NFL, Neal.
Yeah, I mean, I've been a fan of this team for 36 years, 790 plus games, never missed a game. The hardest game I've ever watched in my entire life was Dan Marino's last game against the Jacksonville Jags, the 62-7. This is in my top five. Despite everything that happened, it's Monday Night Football. You're under the bright lights. You've seen Tyler Huntley be able to catch lightning in a bottle elsewhere. You still have Tyreek. You still have Waddle. You still have A-Chain. I did not expect the Dolphins to be this bad. And, it's been an interesting week on Twitter, but we have heard for years now that Tua Tagovailoa was the product of the system. And I'm not here saying Tua Tagovailoa was Dan Marino, and he honestly wasn't even playing that well before his injury this year. But with that said, how bad Mike McDaniel has been without him, how bad Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle have been without him, has been deplorable. And it's not, and you rewatch the tape, there's plays where Tyreek Hill's open. There is plays where he's open, but there's still plays that he should make that he's dropping. Waddle too. You watch teams that go through adversary injury and they lean on their best players. The Dolphins don't have the ability to do that. As good as Tyreek Hill is as a football player, he's an awful leader. He makes headlines more off the field than he does on, and he's one of the best receivers ever to play the game. Like, him having his outburst on the sideline is a terrible look. Jalen Waddle coming to the sideline pouting like a baby is a terrible look. And I understand they're frustrated that they had expectations, but the team's going to gravitate towards them, man. And that was a hard game to watch. When they scored 6 points, I kind of jokingly said, do you think the Dolphins could score 6 points? Now, we did, but damn, was it a fight to get 12 points in this football game. And the offensive line, if we think McDaniel and the receivers look bad without Tua masked the most pathetic interior offensive line that I've maybe ever seen. Between Robert Jones is awful. Like, I don't know how you put him out there in reality and think it's okay. And look, I love Devon Achane, and I think he was pressing in this game, but he was missing some holes for sure. But I think it's hard. Last year when the Jets were inept, they had a bad offensive line. Breece Hall got hit in the backfield 45% of the time. Achane had no room to breathe. You're making him a Jamal Lewis, Derrick Henry type runner between the tackles. It just, the strategy doesn't work. And I know you're with me on this one, man. The most embarrassing part of all of this was, again, on this 3rd and 4th and short situations, man. This is where your offense is a gimmick, where you cannot get 1 yard. It is crazy. That end around to Tyreek Hill, literally, man, I couldn't believe what I saw. And when that happened, that's when the discouragement kicked in for me. This was the part of the schedule where I thought we could win games without Tua, and he could come back and we could make a run. I think we're learning that this team has a lot more deficiencies than we even anticipated. They've put a lot of patchwork on this team, but at the foundation, this team is weak. Mentally, they're weak. They're frail. They lack leadership in the building still. I agree with you 150%. Anthony Weaver's been as advertised. If you told me the defense was ranked number 6 in football, yet we have the worst offense in football, I would tell you you're messing with me. So that's where it gets discouraging for me, because I'll be honest, I don't see it getting any better. I don't see it getting any better until Tua gets back. And when he gets back, to me, I hope not, but I think this is a 1-5 football team. And that schedule in the back half of the year with the Packers, the 49ers, the Bills, the Jets twice. Yeah. I mean, it is.
We hadn't even seen the tough stretch yet, basically.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. So we're going to have to be, just to have a respectable season, we're going to have to be everything that we haven't been during the whole tenure of McDaniel, a team that wins against the best teams in football late in the season. So, for me, I think we can all kind of, and I know I'm going to get, messages that I'm a quitter. It's only week 5. I'll be honest. The playoffs aren't even in the forefront for me. I think I don't think there's a possibility anymore. I think what we're learning is that this rebuild as it was designed failed. And I think what the scary part for me was the Dolphins were so confident in it. They went out and said, we'll pay Tua, we'll pay Waddle, we'll pay Tyreek, we'll pay Ramsey, we'll extend Mike McDaniel.
Yeah, but in fairness, we were all confident after last season.
Yeah, me too. Oh, I'm wrong, and that's look,
we were all wrong. Like 95% of us were wrong.
Oh, if I'm the GM, I'm firing myself at this point because I was totally wrong. And I like there's a lot of things that have happened that you tell me that you add Tyreek Hill, Jalen Ramsey, Terron Armstead to a team that was always around 500, right? And then that your quarterback elevates from being Humpty Dumpty, who's broken to a top 10 quarterback in this league. I think you're realistic to think they have a shot to win a division. Just like we saw last year, they were 1 game short.
Yeah.
I expected major growth from Mike McDaniel this year, and it's been the opposite, man. It's been a huge regression. The play calling is awful, and it's not just that. It's the lack of accountability after it fails. Like, go up with a mic and say, hey, man, I keep messing up. It's on me. I have to be a better coach. Stop telling us people are playing well. We don't think that. We know it's not true.
See, this is where I'm at. I think we've all been sick of the adversity shtick since what happened at the end of last season, right? The best highlight in the last 4 weeks of that season was the Hard Knocks scene where they compared it to Miami Vice, right? You remember with the in the air? That was the best part of the last 4 weeks of the season. I think the problem right now is, Neal, we want you to show us some action, and if you're not getting the results on the field, why aren't we seeing off the field stuff? Like Ross sold 10% is in talks to sell 10% of the team right now to a sports group and an individual who own part of the Nets. And is that getting us out of our seats? Because the Nets are a loser franchise in the NBA. And I think the problem, Neal, is when you go back to that word, the keyword accountability, we want people to not only show and take on some accountability, we also want people to be held accountable from the top brass. And we know Greer is Garfinkel's buddy. We know that's who saved him through the Flores firing. We know they love Mike McDaniel in that building. The person, not just it's farther than results. It's how much they like the guy. The problem is you got options on the table that can send a message to the fans and most importantly to that locker room, because you're going to start losing players here if you don't show them you are still all in. And my issue here is you've got options. Okay, you could fire Chris Greer, and you could let Renji McKenzie and Marvin Allen as a joint force who have great football resumes. You could have them finish out the season as the decision makers. Or, listen, when you're talking about accountability, I think we all want Mike McDaniel to take accountability for the play calling or someone to hold him accountable. You could have Mike McDaniel, listen, you don't want to hand over play calling and look weak? Okay, fire Frank Smith, promote Darrell Bevell, and we will put out the narrative that Darrell Bevell would only accept the promotion if he could call plays. Boom. We've just made you not look weak, and we've moved the play calling off to someone who's freaking called plays in 2 Super Bowls and won one of them, okay? Number 2 is you fire Frank Smith, you fire Mike McDaniel, and you elevate Anthony Weaver to your head coach, and you make Darrell Bevell the OC. My point is, you've got options to send a message. And what do they keep doing? They're sitting on their hands hoping it's going to get better. Are you going to really put 2 in the position where last time he came back from a concussion in a year, he got hurt again? But let's say he does stay healthy. We're guaranteed his health. After what we saw in the first game and a half that he played before he went out, we were already seeing the flaws in the offense. It's just Tua was masking them. And now you're right. We could I remember on Twitter, bro, people were like, I said, hey, the goal in these 4 games that Tua is out, you got to go 2-2. Oh, we should be 3-1. Oh, we should be 4-0. And I was like, nope, you got to go 2-2. And now you're right. We might go 0-4. So what, Neal? Now you're going to expect this guy to come back from a concussion. The problems are evident with our offense. Our coach continues to not make adjustments and continues to say, nope, going with what worked a year and a half ago, going with what worked when it's been figured out so much, Neal. You know why? Because not only are defenses studying at us, but offenses are basically, see, this is why people can't say that McDaniel isn't smart or he doesn't know what he's doing to an extent, because how many offenses in NFL and college are stealing the cheap motion alone from him, right? So,
right.
Yeah, but the thing is, when you got other teams' offenses incorporating that stuff and you got other teams' defenses figuring out how to stop it. I mean, Brian Flores said he spent all offseason trying to figure out how to stop this kind of stuff. So when you've got guys working diligently, now you've got to adjust. You got to show new wrinkles. You got to show new capabilities. And we've been saying it for 3 seasons now, Neal. I've said it with you. I've said it with EM Dolphin fan. The one thing that always had us excited in every offseason was what? What is McDaniel's adjustment going to be when these guys start figuring them out? The problem is we haven't seen the adjustment for 2 seasons now. And where we are as a team right now, bro, we're getting Neal. We're going to be 1-5. Are we going to ask this guy to come back?
I wouldn't do it.
Go 10-1, or you got to go 9-2 at minimum so we can make a playoff run? Because we're going to be in such bad space. 9-2 would get us to 10-7, and we might sneak into the playoffs.
No, I look, if they're 1-5, they have to look in the mirror and be honest with themselves. Okay, this team's not going 9-2. I don't know if they go 9-2 with vintage Dan Marino on the roster. I'm just being honest. Like, so if and this isn't about tanking in draft order to me. This is about, you have a player. Tua is an absolute warrior. He's insane. He wants to go back on the football field the next day after this happens.
Yo, Neal, I heard when he was walking in the tunnel, he was when they're taking him in the tunnel to check him out, I heard he was already asking to go back on the field. And he was going.
And you got to kind of, I think, protect him from himself here a little bit.
Exactly.
And if you have nothing to play for and you put Tua out there and he gets hurt behind this pathetic offensive line, you're almost an accessory to freaking murder. Like, right? Like, it is pathetic. Like, I don't think that this team, it's bad. Like, look, and I didn't like what Skylar Thompson did in that game, but like, look what's happening to the quarterbacks on this roster, right? Like, this is malpractice. I don't think, I honestly think that regardless of what the Dolphins record are, that Tua should not rush to come back as soon as he's eligible. I just think that this is a little bit different of a scenario. The season isn't going the route we wanted it to go. We have to look in the mirror and say, we are not the team we thought we were going to be, right? And I think that's fair. With Mike McDaniel, man, I think what we're seeing is that the jump from where he was to being a head coach was huge. He needed to be an offensive coordinator first, in my opinion. He has not developed those strong traits that you need to be a leader of men, a coach, but he is a great schematic offensive guy. Like, there is no doubt about it. He's not a great play caller, and you learn that from trial and tribulation, kind of baptism by fire, right? He has not found the counter. And what the last 10 games tell me is that good defensive coordinators have figured out Mike's offense. It's bracketing the receivers, playing cover 2 on the back end, and just beating a piss-poor offensive line up front consistently. The Ravens can do it. The Chiefs can do it. The Bills can do it. The Eagles can do it. The 49ers can do it. The 5 most physical teams in football consistently beat the Dolphins because their coaches know their defensive line is going to dominate the Dolphins' offensive line, and they can take out Tyreek and Waddle. And there's no counter to Mike McDaniel yet. And we are pretenders when it comes to running the football. What we said in our all-season kind of preview was 2 things. We want to see the Dolphins become better at conventional offense and really learn how to run the ball, right? Well, they have done neither of that. They run more trickery than they ever have, more motion than they ever have, and they can't line up and get 2 yards on a run to save their life. So, like, it's
Patrick Paul. Did you see that block Patrick Paul blew on the end around?
Yeah, I mean, look, they're young. It's 4 games, right? And sometimes you set yourself up for bad expectations when you rely on draft classes to be what it is, right? But none of the Dolphins rookies right now are really doing much, right? I mean, good for Patrick Paul to go in there and actually kind of look respectable in his first start. I'll give him that. That was Chop's worst game. Chop got
just dominated.
Destroyed.
Yeah.
And see, people get upset when you say this. I think Chop is going to be in 2 years a very good pass rusher in this league. I don't know if he was the right pick for the Miami Dolphins where they were in their building part. We got to see it. Now we're with him. Now we need him with Jaelan Phillips going down, which, by the way, sidebar, that's awful. Jaelan Phillips, absolute man. I hope he bounces back. If there's a guy that goes down on injury on this team, Jaelan Phillips is on the short list of people that I don't want it to be, not just because he's a great football player, but he's been nothing but great since his time in Miami. But they have to look at this reason, and they have to say, we're not good enough. Whether it is 100% teardown, which is what I would do, but I don't think it's going to happen. I don't think what should happen and what will happen are different conversations. What I think likely is going to be happen is that Chris Greer is going to get the axe here. And I think, like you said, it's going to happen during the course of the season. If they get their asses kicked by the Patriots this weekend, it could happen as early as Monday. If it's ugly, it could happen, right? I think that they're going to allow Mike McDaniel. They're going to try to find a general manager that can come in here and build this, because I don't think they think it has to be a teardown yet. I think they could supplement what they have in place, and that Mike McDaniel's offense can work. But I think his hands are going to be kind of some of his power is going to be stripped in some of the decisions and stuff he can make.
Yeah.
And the GM's going to, like you just said kind of before we hopped on here, the GM's going to have to say, hey, 1 year, Mike McDaniel, you better show something or you're going to get canned. I'm going to get my guy, right? And I think they're going to keep a lot of guys. I mean, I think Armstead's going to be gone. I think Chubb's going to be gone. I think there's going to be moves. I personally right now would trade Javon Holland before the deadline and try to get another second-round pick. And it's not that I don't like I want Javon Holland to be part of this nucleus. I don't think they're going to sign him. I don't think it's going to work out. So I think why not try to go get something for him while you can? But like the David Longs of the world, the Raheem Mosterts of the world, definitely Armstrong, the guys that continually for 3-4 years in a row have gotten hurt, you got to pull the plug on them. You got to have available players. You can't bank on the same injury-prone players time after time. I hope that this, whether McDaniel's back or not, but for the whole entire organization, this cleat of reality that they've been dealing with the last couple of weeks, I hope that knocks a little of that arrogance out of them, because I think they're an arrogant organization that's accomplished nothing. I think they walk around like they're
I wouldn't argue that. Yeah.
You know what I mean? I think it's one of those things. Sometimes being humble to the extent the Dolphins are being humbled, going from the number one offense in football to the worst in literally a matter of months. If that doesn't humble you, nothing else will. I think this is a huge learning lesson. People are going to tell me I'm crazy. There's still a lot of talent on this football team. When the wheels fall off on an NFL football team, it goes downhill in a hurry. I don't think this Dolphin team's good. With Tua, if he plays the second half, I think they're a 5-win team, 6-win team max. So the question in the title: do you tank? I don't think that's going to happen, because I do think if it was completely ugly, there is a chance Mike McDaniel could get cut. Right? Like there is a chance. So I think team's got to show some fight, but I do think that this team right now is just flawed. And it is all the things that, I'll throw myself under the bus. I thought they'd be able to get by on the defensive line. And Calais Campbell's been playing really well, but their defensive line still is inadequate. It's still not good enough. I thought that they'd be able to get by to an extent with the offensive line, but we hitched our wagon to Isaiah Wynn again, and he's hurt again, which – how did that happen? Because he wasn't hurt when we signed him, but then he got hurt, and then Teron Armstead went down again. And it's just like the same exact thing continues to happen. So I don't know if you call it tanking, but I think you allow the quarterback that you just paid all the time in the world to get healthy. And then if you have to make a decision on him, you can. I think that we were talking before we jumped on. I think Tua in the Alex Smith role, where you're looking for your Pat Mahomes, is a good role for him to be in right now, knowing he could go down. So, I think you and I both are, if the Dolphins have a top 5 pick and there's a certain quarterback, whether it's Cam Ward, Milroe, Garrett Nussmeier, Shador Sanders, whoever it may be, and this is despite needing help in the trenches, I take that quarterback and he is having a clipboard in his hand and he's going to learn for a whole season. He ain't going out unless it's under necessity. And then every other pick that I have, that third round pick, any money I spend in free agency is all about offensive and defensive line, and that is it. That is it. And I count a pass rusher in it, because I do think with Phillips coming back, pass rush is going to fall in that equation. But I'm at a point. I did this. I'm at a point where A-Chain, Waddle, Zach Sealer are the 3 untouchables to me, and I'm willing to have a conversation about anyone else on this football team. And maybe that's me waving the white towel a little too early. I have just seen this song and dance before, and I think where you are, they're going to be drafting high, and you have to take advantage of that high pick.
So there's a couple issues here. Okay, so number one, back to your last time you spoke. Rob Jones, I dropped a preseason film study. I've been saying there's no way this guy's a competent starter in the NFL. They shouldn't have even trotted this guy out there. Eichenberg, He's been up and down all year. He has some games where you get by with him, and he has some games where he's an absolute liability. So I think those spots and the, you talk about arrogance, the arrogance that you thought Liam Eichenberg could replace Robert Hunt is unbelievable. And I've talked about this before. That right there shows you where these people are at. And, we're seeing the stubbornness and the ego pop up with this offensive line. We're seeing the traits we didn't like, minus the people person stuff, but we're seeing the coaching traits we didn't like of Flores pop up in just different areas right now with the stubbornness and the ego. And, as far as here's my thought on whether you should tank or try and salvage the season. First of all, I can't sit here and watch us be uncompetitive like this for 50 more weeks. I'll lose my mind, bro. I'm just telling you right now. I'll lose my mind.
Me too. Okay. It was hard. It's hard to watch them. It's hard to watch the Dolphins.
And last time you tanked and you did this, you didn't even do that right. So I don't even got the faith that if you say, okay, well, let's tank quietly, I don't even got the faith you'll do that right. And then secondly, if it becomes obvious what you're doing, are we going to get investigated again? And we're going to be even a further embarrassment? Now, I agree with you. There's some talent here at the quarterback position, with Cam Ward, Garrett Nussmeier, Shedeur Sanders, there are some literal guys. Obviously, I like Jackson Dart. There are some guys here. Jalen Milroe, another guy, obviously, you mentioned, but I think he should go back for a year at Alabama and become a better passer, because then I think he'd be the unquestioned number one pick next year. But there is some legitimate eligible talent at the quarterback position. So I don't even think you necessarily need the number one pick. But, I agree with you wholeheartedly. I mean, we talked about it before we went live, and I've talked about it on this channel before. The best scenario would be Tua comes back, Tua stays healthy, he plays well enough that they say, okay, this is the deal. We will keep you on this roster, and we are still going to draft a guy high in the draft, and you are going to be, like you said, the Alex Smith to him. We are going to groom this guy the proper way. You go out. If you get hurt, it's over. It's done. This kid's in. Sayonara. If you don't get hurt, we will play the season out and evaluate if that kid needs another year to groom under you, or if he's ready to go in year one, year two, and we got to move off of you, right? So that's the stage I'm at right now, because with the way this roster's been constructed and the window they've set themselves in, which is like a 3-year window, we cannot afford to be losing our quarterback. I mean, it's going to be 4 games this year, minimum. What's next year? 6 games? You can't afford to be doing, and then the draft pick, Neal, it's technically a cheaper investment than going out and paying 11 or 12 million for like a Gardner Minshew or something like that, right? So, and it's a guy you get to groom yourself and build in your image, not someone who's been passed around the league. Like, I know everyone's high on potentially Sam Darnold because he'll be a free agent or whatever. I'm good. Just draft the guy, groom him the right way. You threw a kid in there, right? And you didn't even give him a full 2 years off a posterior wall fracture, which is what everyone thought would hold him back. They didn't think concussions would. They thought the hip injury would. But you threw a guy, how many games into the season as a rookie, coming off that major injury when he was working all offseason to get back. He wasn't working all offseason to master the offense. He was working all offseason to be able to walk on a freaking football field and be able to play. And you got to do it the right way. You got to do it the way the Packers have done it. Rodgers sat for 2 years behind Favre. Jordan Love sat for 2 years behind Rodgers. Good. You got to start taking ideas and philosophies from franchises that are really good. It goes back to your Ray Lewis tweet today, right? Like, that is, wanting to do things the certain ways that franchises with proven track records do it is not a bad thing. It's a smart thing. It's like, why the Steelers, you want Andy Weidel, right? As your, what did they do? They went out, right? Because this is what I think is going to happen, Em. I've been told by a little birdie. You know what I mean? And this is what I think is going to happen. I think if they fire Chris Greer, I really think it's going to be Brandon Shore. And Brandon Shore, look at what they did in Pittsburgh, Neal. Omar Khan is not a football guy. He's an operations and finance guy. But what did he do? He went and got Andy Weidel, a football guy, made him his assistant GM, and then they went out and got a great scouting department with great scouting minds, and he's learning the football side from great football minds. If you're going to hire a guy like Brandon Shore in-house, that's what you need to do. You need to set him up with great football minds around him so he could learn that side of the game. Because, hey, I don't know if you've gone to the website of the Miami Dolphins, but you go look at all the titles Brandon Shore holds right now, brother.
Yeah, I know.
That guy's got more. The only people that have more power than him in that building right now are Garfinkel and Ross.
Right. Well, look, Andy Weidel is the GM I want. I'm not going to take full credit. I only know Andy Weidel because somebody for now that I was tweeted this earlier today, my favorite team, the Baltimore Ravens staff, told me that Ozzie Newsome personally said, because Andy Weidel worked for the Ravens for 11 years. And Ozzie Newsome said, we can't let that guy out of the door, out of the building. He's one of the next best GMs in football. So, and then he went to Philadelphia, and then he went to Pittsburgh. All three of those teams build the trenches better than anybody in football. Anyone in football. And they find success. Look at the Eagles. Their left tackle, right? Their right tackle, both top 5 at the position. Landon Dickerson. They have just absolutely dominated in the trenches, the Eagles. The Ravens have done the same. And to your point on the quarterback position, like, unfortunately, the truth is that when you do that, if you draft a guy, you are sunsetting Tua at a point in the future. Like, is it a year? Is it 2 years? Eventually, you plan on doing that. Why I liked about some of the quarterbacks that we named, it reminds me a lot of what the Ravens did, the transition from Joe Flacco to Lamar Jackson as well, right? Like, they had a guy who was a statue in the pocket. I'm not saying Tua is a statue, but he's a pocket passer who had a great arm, was never known for making plays with his feet. And then they went out and drafted the Barry Sanders of the quarterback position and Lamar Jackson. And everyone in this town was pissed that we just drafted a wide receiver to play quarterback. And I think Lamar still has to prove in the playoffs, but I do think that I don't know if he's one of the best. He is one of the best quarterbacks in football, but I think he's a better football player than he is quarterback. And we've seen him with his legs win games. So, like, I am attracted to see what a quarterback can do in this system with the ability to create with his legs. I am like, I wish Tyler Huntley was a better passer so we can get a little glimpse of it. But, like, I am excited to see what happens when a quarterback can extend the play 5 seconds and Tyreek Hill comes crossing around the field, right? Like, and this quarterback, he's whoever it isn't going to walk on water. They're going to need some offensive line. The number one guy that I'm paying attention to, and the reason I want to get to trade Javon Holland is because I want to save that money and I want to spend it, and I want to spend it on a right guard named Trey Smith from the Kansas City Chiefs, who I think is actually a little bit better of a right guard than Robert Hunt. Like, go get me an elite level right guard to put between Austin Jackson and Aaron Brewer, and then go do the same in the draft. Go get me a high caliber left guard and build the trenches. And hopefully Patrick Paul continues to develop on the left side. But the Dolphins should treat the offensive line where every year they're adding a depth piece and hoping that it hits, right?
Yeah.
On the defensive line, they should be doing the same thing. Like, God, and I do sound like a Ravens fan, but listen, like, they drafted Travis Jones in the 3rd round, a guy that a lot of people are like, this guy's underrated. He fell in their lap. He's one of the best defensive tackles in football right now.
Well, you can use the Steelers. Look at what and your boy Andy Weidel. Look at how he drafted for the Steelers, right?
Keontae Benton, and like these guys find these talented guys. Unfortunately, man, we're like an exotic car collector. We just want to get all the new fancy Ferraris and all, these McLarens, and we want to have a driveway with all these bright neon colored McLarens, but they're all sitting there with no engines. You know what I mean? Like, that's how we built this team. They have to find people that are tougher. And like we talked about this, it's and it's the cliche about adding dogs. Like, sure, like I think Calais Campbell, Jordan Brooks are guys that love football. But it means so much more when it's the best players on your football team that are just demanding the respect. Because I like Jordan Brooks, and he's been a pretty good signing for us, right? It's a good signing.
He has been.
But he's Jordan Brooks. Like, he can't, with like how Ray Lewis in that video got his team around. Like, we need our best players to be those guys, and I don't ever see it happening for Tyreek Hill. And he's the best player on this team. And that's the conundrum, is that I am worried about a complete Tyreek Hill implosion coming in the next few weeks.
Yeah, if things don't go its way. But my point with the Steelers was, look at what they've done over the last 2 years. 2 years ago, they drafted Broderick Jones.
Right.
This
Trenches.
year, they drafted 3 guys that we all wanted. We all wanted Troy Fautanu. I thought Zach Frazier was the best center in this class. They took Zach Frazier, and then a guard I was really high on, Mason McCormick. They took 3 players in this draft, man. And I meant to tell you this. I was talking to a source last weekend, and the word that I got, brother, was that pick was going to be Troy Fautanu, and they didn't think the Steelers were going to draft him.
Oh, really? Wow.
That's who it was. It was going to be Fautanu, and then they drafted him, and then they shifted. That's when they shifted to Chop. But if Fautanu was on the board, it was going to be Fautanu. Would be a Dolphin right now.
Well, Reese, let me ask you a question then, because this is what pisses me off about the Dolphins. If you have a conviction for a player, why would you let a team right in front of you take that player? Why not part with a 4th-round pick in 2 years to go get that player? This is like, when we look at this rebuild failing, the Dolphins have drafted good quality players in round 1, right? They fail in round 2, round 3, outside of Devon A-Chain, right? But they fail. But sometimes just drafting a good player in round 1 is not enough. Like I said, I think Chop Robinson in 2 years is going to be a very good pass rusher in this league.
Well, Jaelan Phillips took a while to come on in year 1. Right? He didn't get his first sack till game 5.
Right. So, it's far from over. Now, Troy Fautanu was my 8th overall player.
Yeah, you loved him.
If he was at our left guard right now, this season would be 100% different. One player could change. Yeah. And that's where
especially if Armstead could stay healthy next to him, Neal.
Well, look, we learned in 2020, because let's start. That's where this rebuild started. We got the quarterback we all wanted, right? Has Tua been injured? Sure. Has his availability been questioned? Sure. But I can never fault that, because he became a top 10 quarterback in this league, and Tua we all wanted. So, bravo. The Austin Jackson pick. And Austin Jackson is a middle-of-the-pack right tackle in this league right now.
Yeah.
They wanted Tristan Wirfs. The difference.
And they balked at the price.
Right. Just imagine how different it is. And then Noah Igbenogany, man,
that was
at times I'm the biggest
Dolphin
homer in the world.
You know what I don't get about the Noah pick? Neal, you know what I don't get about the Noah pick? The card you originally handed in was DeAndre Swift.
I remember.
You let Flores get in your year that much in the matter of 3 or 4 picks, Neal?
Right. You're right. I mean, it's crazy.
Greer's got to put his foot down and be like, no, I'm taking this guy. And DeAndre Swift ain't a world beater, but he's better than Noah Igbenogany.
Right. And we were talking about leadership from the players. Who the hell's the leader in the organization, right? Because you said this. I heard it was last week on your shows. You were talking about, yeah, man, I wish that that Ozzie Newsome didn't work for the Ravens and the Dolphins, because I'll get him. Me too. But you know what? Not Stephen Bisciotti, the owner of the team, never crossed Ozzie Newsome. The owner feared Ozzie Newsome, the GM. Everybody in that building gave their 2 cents, their scouting reports. Ozzie got their input, but Ozzie made the decision. When everyone told Ozzie not to take Jonathan Ogden, it made no sense, who's probably a top 5 left tackle ever.
Yeah.
He said, I'm not going to take whatever. I forget the quarterback. It was a huge bust that was coming out that year. Everybody wanted the Ravens to take a quarterback. They were an expansion team. They were all pushing for him. Was it 96? Man, I'm drawing a blank. But they took.
I'll figure it out. Don't worry, I got you.
They took Ogden, and then in pick 26, they took a guy who was a character concern who ended up being Ray Lewis. And you need a leader. A good organization gathers the data, but there's a guy who's implemented in a role, who's the power authority figure.
Was it Tony Banks?
No, it was. Oh man, it was.
I think Tony Banks was the first quarterback taken in the draft.
Was he really? Okay. I'll look up too. But what I'm saying is that's the thing about Stephen Ross that drives me crazy. I think Stephen Ross at his heart has the best intentions of maybe any owner of all. What he's realizing is you can't buy it, though. You can't go out and buy a championship. You actually, and he has too many people in his ear. He listens to too many people. He, to me, just has not found a way to get out of his own way. And that to me is the frustrating part. I don't know when this organization has that leader, but that's what they need, man. They need the guy behind the scenes. Like, and you can't even make it up. Like the other day when they showed Chris Greer in the press box of the game, it made him look like he was hiding behind a pole. He wasn't. But like the irony of them flipping to him in a game, that's the picture that we get, was just kind of like, here we go. What an embarrassment. So, I mean, dude, we could beat this dead horse to death. At the end of the day, it's not good enough. I'm worried that we might get our roofs blown off by a really, really bad Patriots team.
You know what's crazy, Neal? That 96 draft, Neal, he drafted Ogden and Ray Lewis. Like, you drafted two Hall of Famers in one draft.
Right,
bro.
Right. And that draft, everyone said that Ray Lewis was like a bad, and look, he turned out to do some messed up things. I personally have some personal vendettas against Ray Lewis because he's put a couple of my friends' construction companies out of business by some bad ventures that whatever. But he was obviously one of the best linebackers ever played the game, and he was stolen. He was stolen from it. God, I'm still looking for this quarterback, but like
the quarterbacks drafted in that class were Tony Banks, Kerwin Bell, Jeff Brom, Bobby Hoying, Danny Kennel, Jeff Lewis, Jamie Martin, Shane Matthews, Scott Milanovich, Doug Nussmeier, Steve Stenstrom, and Jay Walker.
Oh, man, I don't even know who it was, man. I know because I remember that draft because we drafted Daryl Gardner, and I love Daryl Gardner. And he was paired with Tim Bowens. I'm drawing a blank. Maybe it was Tony Banks. That draft actually turned out to be really good. That was the Keyshawn Johnson draft. But like, yeah, man, we need Chris Greer is not the GM. He's not, and it doesn't have to be Andy Weidel. There's guys like the guy in Kansas City. There's good guys out there, man. They have to get rid of Chris Greer. I think at this point, no matter what happens, I think no matter what happens, if this team doesn't make the playoffs, there's no way in hell they can go out there and sell this bag of goods anymore. It's just done.
Yeah, that's another. Hey, that draft, that 96 draft you're talking about, Garrett Nussmeier's dad won in that draft. Doug Nussmeier.
Yeah. Saints, I think.
I'm telling you, Neal, if that guy's going to be the best pocket passer out of this class, bro.
Justin just saved me in the thing. It was not a quarterback. It was Lawrence Phillips from Nebraska that everyone.
The running back, right?
Yeah, and then he might have passed away. I think something happened with him since then. You remember the Dolphins brought him in for a cup of tea?
Yeah, I remember that. Yeah. But I'm telling you, Neal, Garrett Nussmeier, you watch some of the throws he's making right now. That kid's, and he's lineage, right? Like his dad was an NFL quarterback. He wasn't very good, and he ended up becoming a coach. Like Garrett Nussmeier, like when you talk about that guy might have the highest ceiling. Like Shedeur Sanders might have might be the most explosive guy in that class, but Garrett Nussmeier might have the highest ceiling as a passer in that class by by a big margin. That kid.
Well, you look at it too. Like you look because you go and Cam
Martin
Ward
hit me up, Neal. Martin heard me talking about Garrett Nussmeier, and Martin played quarterback at FAMU, right?
Yeah,
he hit me up. He said, "Yo, Nussmeier's the move, bro." He said, "That's the guy." He's like, "That's the guy." And the one thing Martin likes about, and maybe you'll respect this too about Nussmeier, he said, "Look at his personality. He's let other quarterbacks come and go and get shots, but for him, he's waited, he's bided his time to take his shot, and he's making the most of it."
Right. And look, we said this a couple weeks ago. I did hear that he was like prone to stay, but like if this guy elevates to a top 10 draft pick, he'd come out. Yeah. Like you get to the top 10 level, you're gonna come out. And like everyone's said this was not a strong quarterback class, but with all the teams needing quarterbacks, the Panthers, the Titans, the Giants, the Raiders, the Rams, potentially the Dolphins, like you're going to see 5 or 6 of these guys go in the first round this year, right? There's Quinn Ewers. There's a lot of guys that are going to go in the first round. Seattle's a team I think could take a quarterback if the right guy was there. Like I'll tell you this, a lot of mock drafts that are out there now are starting to have the Browns take a quarterback in the top 10 and try to get out of that Deshaun contract. So like there's some good quarterbacks that are in this draft. That's why I think you nailed it. get one, develop them. And I know that we don't have an offensive line and go get the line first, but I'm not passing on Shedeur Sanders or Cam Ward or Jalen Milroe to get Will Campbell. I'm just not. Like, I think Will Campbell could be a good guard.
Better throw Garrett Nussmeier in that too. I wouldn't pass
No.
on all four of those guys for an offensive lineman.
No. I think the quarterback class is actually pretty strong here.
Yeah.
And it's actually a really, really good DT draft. Get one of those guys. And
you love Mason Graham, eh? You love Mason Graham.
Dude, Mason Graham, I do love. But I'll tell you this. The guy who's I think could be the biggest riser in terms from college to the pros is actually his countermate is Kenneth Grant. That dude is an athletic freak. He's got, I think, a sack in 3 straight games. I mean, dude, people his size should not move the way he does. There's some good ones, man. There's TJ Sanders. There's Walter Nolan from Mississippi, Tyleek Williams from Ohio State, Deion Walker from Kentucky. There's a lot. I mean, I'm in draft mode, man, because when things go south, the first thing you do is start going to the draft to save you. So
yeah. Okay, so OBJ return. Let's talk about two things before we get into the Patriots thing. OBJ returned to practice today, and the Miami Dolphins, they went out with Jaelan Phillips done for the season. They went out and they signed Tyus Bowser, former Ravens rusher. A couple of years ago in 2021, he had 7 sacks. 2024, he's been with Seattle. It hasn't been that great. What are your thoughts on the Bowser move, and what are your thoughts on OBJ finally returning to practice?
Yeah, OBJ, I'm excited for him to turn back. I think it's like a little too late, though. It's good to have him out there. Right now, we don't have a quarterback that could probably get him the ball consistently, so he won't be as productive as he would. I think Odell Beckham could be a trade piece at the deadline. If he does come in here and start playing well, and the Dolphins aren't in contention, maybe he's a guy that you could send back to like a team that had him like Baltimore, who could use a guy, you know what I mean? Like maybe there's something there. But I am excited to see Odell go out there. Like it's a cheap move that we made. And I wish we got to see it with Tua and this offense at full strength. It kind of seemed like the season was a little doomed from the start when he was immediately put on the PUP, and we didn't even know this injury was happening. What was the other one?
Tyus Bowser. They added Tyus Bowser today.
Dude, he played really good in Baltimore, but I got to see him do it here because he's on Seattle's practice squad. He had some highly productive seasons in Baltimore, but he was surrounded by such good front seven talent. There's worse moves they could have made. I know you and I had thought that we might have brought him in at a certain time beginning of the season. I think he's a better player than Cameron Good by a lot, by a wide margin, and they need a pass rusher. So I think he's serviceable. And I do think Weaver has familiarity with him, so that will help him. Watch him be a guy who goes out there and gets a couple sacks out of nowhere because we are playing a awful New England Patriots offensive line.
Yeah.
Veteran Lowe, who's the guy who came out of Illinois, is probably he's the Liam Eichenberg of left tackles. Like, you know what I mean? Like that's and they're starting pure rookie. They're starting at left guard, the guy Michael Jordan, not the basketball player, the guy from Ohio State, and then David Andrews, their center. I think he's got some shoulder injury that's not season injury, but I'd have a hard time thinking this guy's going to play. If he does, he's going to play with a harness, and so they're going to be playing an awful offensive line. The Patriots have a worse offensive line than the Dolphins, and that's saying something. So
yeah,
when you look at a league where confidence is the roller coaster you need to be on, and I'm thinking about the future more than I am this season, and I know people hate it because I'm getting messages, but Chop Robinson, go make a couple plays this week, man.
Yeah. And show more than a bull rush, please, for the love of God.
Man, I like some of those runs, dude. I felt bad for him, man.
Well, that's the problem. We're not seeing that bend that we saw in Penn State. You know what I mean? We're seeing him not winning with his athleticism and his speed as much, and he's more trying to win with power right now, and that contradicts what he does well.
Well, look, I think you and I are on the same page here. We're frustrated as hell. We're not happy. I'm not all about taking mulligans on football seasons. This sucks. It's week 5.
Andrews is out for this season. He had surgery.
He did get the surgery. So that's their best offensive line, except on Onwenu, who's on the right side. But,
Yeah.
Look, it's frustrating. You don't quit on your team. It's been, for me, this honestly, even in the darkest times, 2005 was a pretty awful time. Like, there's still football to be played. I am more worried about what players on this team can grow for 2025. That's what I want to see. I want Patrick Paul to start even if Armstead's healthy, but it won't happen.
I
But
agree. Yeah.
I want to see Paul out there. I want to see Chop out there. I want to see Cam Smith, if he gets back on the field and can play, I want to see him out there.
They've acted. Yeah, he's going to come off PUP soon, right?
I think they put him off PUP. They won't bring him back this week, though. I don't think him or
No. They opened his window.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So,
I was telling you before we went live, this is how we're not getting breaks, and this Patriots game is going to be another example. I don't know if you saw it, but apparently they're benching Rhamondre Stevenson. He's had a fumble in each of the 4 games. And of course, they benched the guy who's got fumbleitis right before they face us. So apparently they're going to be rolling with Antonio Gibson as the number 1 this week. So we can't even catch breaks with roster moves right now. And this could very well be another low scoring, tough to watch game with both offensive lines getting eat up a little bit.
I'll be honest. I think the Dolphins could win this game. And I know it's crazy after all I just said about this team and everything about them. New England is really, really bad. They are. Rhamondre Stevens runs the ball really well against us. Him being out helps us. You know what I mean? Like, that helps us. And if they want to cut him, that's a guy that I would take on my team in short situations as a runner. So, like, send him over here to me. I just think our defensive line, and that's Calais Campbell and Zach Sealer, can beat them up front a little bit. And it's Jacoby Brissett. And Jacoby Brissett, I watched them play the Jets that one week, man. And I sat there and I was like, they're so lucky they got those 6 rings, man, because it's going to be a long time before they sniff another one. Like, they have good safeties. Their defense is well coached. Is Jawan Bentley out for this game as well? I think he's still out, right? Their middle linebacker. Barmore's out. Barmore's still out.
Yeah, it looks like Bentley is out.
Yeah, Bentley's out. Barmore. So their defense, it's beatable. It's going to be ugly. This might be a 12-9 type of game or something like that. But I do think this game's going to have huge draft pick considerations down the road. I do. I think these are 2 teams that could find themselves picking in the top 5, 8, and one game could change a lot. But I'm not going to sit here and pray the Dolphins lose. If they win, I'll be happy. But then I'll probably be pissed on draft day when we're on the board and we want to take Cameron Ward and someone takes him 1 pick before us. But it is what it is. It's a long season. You can't expect your team to tank. If your team does tank, burn them all down and start all over anyway, right? So
Aaron Berg says, as a Dolphins fans, we're going through a lot. I have some good news. My wife is awake, talking, continuing a battle with leukemia. We are at John Hopkins. Thanks for all the prayers, Finn fam. So send prayers to Aaron Berg. And also continue to send prayers Richmond Webb's way. His wife is in the hospital right now, and she's going to be in there for another 2-3 weeks. They're expecting her. So he's going through a lot right now. Shout out to Knight. He says, Mike let the motions get to his head. He went from it being a tool to being too damn dependent on doing the motions. At some point, he got lost. Sean Siepler donates $50 and he says the best and legal way to tank maybe to continue to let Mike McDaniel call the offense. Hey, you really want to tank, put Mike McDaniel calling the offense and get Skylar healthy and put him in at quarterback. That's how you really tank.
That you're joking. I think that Skylar Thompson is going to start another game for the Dolphins.
Oh my God. So here's where I'm at with the Patriots game. Spoiler alert for people who are going to be watching my preview show tomorrow. Until you show me you can win a game, I'm not picking you to win a game.
Yeah, that's fair. I think
we all thought they would beat the worst team in football last week, and Mason Rudolph ends up having the most average and mediocre game you can have, but it was still better than what we got, and they beat us. Like, that's another thing. Like, injuries aren't even going away, and not just on our own team, but the other team, Neal, because it looks like the Titans used the Levis injury to bench him quietly for Mason Rudolph so they wouldn't get the turnovers, and then they won the game. And our quarterback didn't even throw for 100 yards when you add in the yards lost on sacks. Like, I don't know, man. This is ugly right now. Huntley, another week in the offense, and we're going to say it until we're blue in the face. Is this the week Mike McDaniel dumbs down the offense? I mean, Huntley looked lost with some of those. I mean, look at that drive where we had all the illegal shifts because he doesn't know, he looks lost with all the intricacies and all the motions of this offense. I mean, I don't know how this guy didn't blow the dust off of his 2012 Washington Redskins playbook and say, what did we run with RG3? Let's do that with Tyler Huntley right now. Instead, he's like, no, we're not changing much. Go out there and run it like you're Tua Tagovailoa, bro, when you saw with all the deep shots. I mean, he's throwing short to Tyreek. Tyreek beats his guy along the left sideline. What's he doing? He's throwing back shoulder for him to turn around instead of run under it. And then he's overthrowing him by a mile because there's no chemistry, right? Because he hasn't been there long enough, in a game where not only the opportunities few and far between, but you got to make everyone that rears its face, you got to make it pay. And you left 21 points on the board just with those 3 throws alone. And, Tyler Huntley is being asked to do things in the system that require timing and anticipation, which are not his strengths as a thrower. So, right. You have to, at some point, Mike McDaniel has to wake up. I know he gets to the building by 4 a.m., but at some moment that alarm clock's got to go off at 2:30 in the morning, and he's got to wake up and say, oh my God, I've got to change it. Instead of being like, nope, this has worked for me. I'm going to keep going back to what works because, brother, at some point, it's not going to work. And we have met those crossroads, and you are going down the long, winding road of struggling and coaching yourself out of a job instead of the other road. I mean, because here's the thing, Neal. You got a guy like LaFleur in Green Bay. They come from the same coaching tree. But look at his ability to adapt when Love went down for Malik Willis. Willis was written off, but Malik Willis has got them 2 wins, looks much better than he ever did in Tennessee, and it's because LaFleur adapted to his personnel. So you got some final thoughts before we get out of here?
Well, and look what Shanahan did with Brock Purdy. Same exact thing. And now Brock Purdy is – my final thoughts are it sucks. It's going to be a windy road this season. The wheels are off. We're on rims on the highway here, and it's going to be. I feel like it's going to be a long season, and I think what we have to do is we can't keep ride the high. If we win this game this Sunday, like I know there's people like, oh look, see we're back. Like it's a long season. We have a lot of injuries that we're trying to overcome. We have a murderer's row of schedule at the end of this year. When we named it earlier, we forgot the Texans. You know what I mean? Like there's a lot of teams on that schedule, but we got to support our team and go down with the ship. And hopefully that ship, if things continue this way, will have a new captain sooner than later. But I think it's a big couple weeks coming up here for Mike McDaniel. So a lot of the fan base has turned on him. I have, I've said this, I'm out on Mike McDaniel. I don't think he will be fired, but I would replace him if I was running this team. No, I definitely don't want Skylar. I'm just saying, look, for all I know, Tua could come back and get hurt. And, this team loves Skylar way more than we all do.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's just a history of what we've seen is questionable decision making.
That's another thing, Neal. This team doesn't and it starts with Greer and his draft picks. They just don't know when to move off and cut bait. They let resources spent or draft position dictate. Oh well, we've invested too much time or we've invested too much in this kid to move off of him. When you got to know when to cut bait, brother. Good GMs and coaches do.
Well, it's like you go out with somebody, you have a horrible first date. The second date, they don't show up, and the third date, you meet them and you bring a wedding ring. It's like we get married to players so soon here, and it just makes no sense to me. Like I don't know how they had Skylar Thompson here for 3 years and thought that was the good contingency plan for Tua. And a fatal flaw here for Mike McDaniel has been designing an offense that pretty much only one quarterback in football can run at a high level.
Yeah.
That just seems like the smartest guy in the room forgot to tie his shoes. You know what I mean? Like that. It's one of those things. But man,
I agree.
I do, I don't want it to be a complete disaster, and I hope we do have some wins to celebrate. But let's see some of these young guys make plays, man, and let's try to get Waddle and Tyreek back on track. And it's almost Sunday already, so we'll see.
Bro, we beat the Patriots too much over the last couple of years for us to start. If we get handled by them, we got the issues are like stamped, signed, sealed, and delivered that they're deeper than the quarterback being out. And Hal 9000 is right. 1-3 isn't as bad. It's how they're losing 110%.
100%.
Guys, I'll be back tomorrow for my game preview. Be out on the lookout for that. Shout out to Jennifer and Brittany in the chat. Go check out Sideline T Podcast. Go show them some love and support. Great show, Neal. Appreciate you and love doing this every week with you. So, guys, smash the like button, subscribe if you're new, and we will see you on the next one. Until then, you already know what time it is. Even if they can't get it up, fins up.